Coming up this week on the Markcast, we got a big time show this week. We are bringing in 2023, saying goodbye to 2022. Huge show this week.
You know the rules, and so do I.
Rick Astley knows his rules, and Dua Lipa has her new rules. And now we are also talking the new rules of XFL 2023.
We didn't feel like we needed to reinvent the wheel. We had a great foundation, what we did in 2020. And there were some things that we felt like we could tweak. And with the USFL, look, more football is great for everybody. And, you know, it was never a thing where, oh, we got to be different. We've got to, it's still, we have to stick to the core of, you know, the game itself. And the game is so amazing. And we didn't want to, you know, migrate so far away from football to what everyone's used to seeing. But we felt like there were some things that we could tweak to make it even better. And we feel like we're in a good place.
Courtesy of the XFL, Dean Blandino, VP of Officiating and Rules Innovation, joining the show. We're talking XFL 2023, dissecting the rule book, changes from the USFL. Did that factor into any of this? A lot more. Then we are doing a 2022 Alt Football Year in Review. USFL historian Paul Reeths joining the show again, talking, you know, favorite moments from the year. Where will 2022 rank in the history of alternative football? Predictions for 2023 and more.
Super exciting. I mean, from an alternative football standpoint, what year can you remember that packed in as much as 2022 did? And here we are on the precipice. We're 7 weeks out from the supposed XFL kickoff, which will lead us all the way through, when you include the CFL, to the Grey Cup on November 19th. Just wrap your head around that. From February through November, alternative football.
And then pour one out for your boy, Brian Woods, this week. We are saying goodbye to the president of the USFL. I have on my Spring League Jousters jersey. What will the departure of Brian Woods mean for the USFL in 2023 and more? Thanks for all your support throughout the year. Should be a good episode. Like and subscribe. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. I have waited a long time to bust out this bad boy on the podcast, my Spring League Jousters jersey. You can see authentic, game worn here. Finally had to procure this on my own via eBay, along with lots of other Spring League items and goodies we have. I'll show off here in a minute. Was waiting a long time to actually wear this on the podcast. Thought, we finally get Brian Woods back on, friend of the show. He's been on a couple times. You know, I talk with Brian on occasion every couple months, kind of getting a temperature check. Hey, what do you think about coming back on the show? With news this week, you know, Brian Woods is stepping down as president of football operations for the USFL. Only thought it was fitting to wear this jersey. We'll have lots more discussion with that with Paul Reeths coming up, but certainly kind of at least the one major storyline this week. Don't have a lot of other major storylines. I know that certain outlets were expecting, you know, the XFL schedule to be released, the Vegas news, all of that. I had heard not coming out this week. Does that mean next week? Does that mean the week of, you know, we're getting close to training camps here, but potentially next week, maybe a New Year's Day baby coming out after the supplemental draft. I could see that. XFL announced this week, you know, the supplemental draft inexplicably taking place on New Year's Day, Sunday, January 1st. But I could see that Monday potentially, you know, getting the schedule released here. We have new hires in terms of content creation here with the XFL. Lots of exciting things coming up, but a big show today. Really appreciate XFL setting this up. Dean Blandino coming on, VP of Officiating and Rules. Been waiting a long time to talk with Dean. Ever since USFL came out last year, you know, borrowed some of the XFL rules. Always wanted to get Dean's take on that. You know, XFL versus USFL. Did they feel like they needed to zig or zag, you know, with the USFL doing certain stuff? Really appreciate that. I think 30 minutes with Dean today on the you know, the week of New Year's Eve and New Year's Day and all of that. Dean coming off of the Holiday Bowl last night. A busy guy there. Really appreciate that. And over at everyone at XFL for setting that up. Very much appreciated. And then, like I said, Paul Reeths coming on, USFL historian, kind of talking XFL, USFL, year in review, kind of where does this, 2022, this crazy year, where does it fit in to kind of the history of alt football? I thought Paul was a good guy to get on for that. Maybe we'll do some predictions for 2023 and then obviously talk through the Brian Woods news this week. I will be back at the end of the show, have some voicemails to play, some comments. I did a, kind of call this week. What favorite moments from 2022. So we'll play those. I think we have a handful of voicemails and then a bunch of comments to read. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Like I said, get your chance to win this illustrious Spring League signed football by a friend of the show, Brian Scott. Brian could be showing up here in the XFL here soon following New Year's Eve, big day, in alt football, the USFL year one contracts expire. But like and subscribe, get signed up. You get a chance. You don't win this jersey. This is mine, but I have this pile over here. I've been waiting till we hit 2,500 to start giving those away. And then don't forget Monday. So the XFL supplemental draft inexplicably taking place on Sunday, January 1st. January 2nd, I will be on here 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. John Vogel, you'll remember John joined me for the XFL quarterback selection show. And John was a big part of our XFL draft day, our 8.5 hours coverage. John will be back with me. We will talk through all the supplemental draft picks. Remember, that's taking place on Sunday. I don't think it's going to be like a big event. I think the XFL is either going to post the list when it's all done. Hey, here's the 60 whatever odd players that got drafted. They might do it by round, but the rounds are kind of unbalanced just depending on the different needs. I don't anticipate it being a big deal on Sunday. It's New Year's Day. It's my mother-in-law's birthday. We will not be going live that day. I'll be on with John 11 a.m. on Monday, taking your calls, questions, kind of all that stuff. Preview training camps now once we have, mostly the rosters. I'm sure we'll probably still get some late-minute additions. Mike Mitchell's been talking about that, but John Vogel will be joining me Monday, 11 a.m., breaking all that down, previewing training camps. And then if we do end up getting that XFL schedule, the Vegas news, any of that, we'll be able to react to that live, 11 a.m. Pacific on Monday. Thank you guys all so much for your support throughout the year. Crazy year in the world of alternative football. Really appreciate it. Like I said, I'll be playing some voicemails, comment stuff at the end of the show. Toss to Dean here, and then we'll be talking with Paul Reeths coming up, USFL historian. Thank you all so much. Like and subscribe. Take care. Well, it always gets me extra credit when I'm able to point at the TV to my wife and go, hey, that's the guy that's coming on the show this week. We have Dean Blandino here fresh off the Holiday Bowl last night. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Great game. I mean, that Oregon comes back and wins. And then the last 2 minutes of that game was like just super exciting. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's my mother's team, and I don't know why, but yeah, very exciting out here in the Johnson household. So that's good. So Dean, a couple, we're here. We'll deep dive Rulebook here in a second. We're 50 whatever days from kickoff. Did you really ever think we'd get back to this point again after everything? I mean, I lived through all this back in 2020.
Yeah, it's been such a long journey. I mean, I still remember. I remember where I was. And when I kind of found out that we weren't going to play, it was going into week 6 in 2020 and we weren't going to play. And I remember getting that news, and then it was just the snowball of the pandemic and everything shut down. And I didn't know, to be honest with you. There was always in the back of my mind, I always hoped that someone would come on board. But even in my wildest dreams, I never imagined the group that came in with Redbird and Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson and all the people, Russ Brandon, it was beyond what I imagined. And I'm just so excited that we're here, like less than a month and a half away. It's crazy.
How do you feel right now? I did kind of a welfare check for our Twitter followers yesterday. Like, how are you feeling? Welfare check, Dean Blandino here, XFL 3.0.
Yeah, well, in that journey, it felt like, okay, we got we got 2 years, we got a year and a half, we got a year. Now it's real, and you're just kind of making sure. I mean, we've got to get our officials to Arlington for a clinic, and we're going to do rehearsal games with ESPN, and then we're going to be playing games here in less than 2 months, and just making sure there's so many logistical things that you have to work through. So it's just kind of working through all that, and just knowing that on February 18th, I mean, we're gonna be kicking off and watching some real live XFL football.
So we cover all leagues on our show. We do CFL and USFL as well. One question I've been dying to ask you for a long time: USFL, lack of a better word, kind of borrowed a lot of the ideas. That you and Sam Schwartzian's been on the show a bunch, and the team, everything back. Do we need to try something different this time? Because for the casual viewer, it is the gimmicky little bitty things that'll kind of make, you can go for 3 points. I'll watch it. Was that ever hey, we got to figure out something else now with the rule book this time?
It's a great question. And we were very intentional. And look, Sam Schwartzstein was so integral in that process in terms of putting some of those rules together. And we were very intentional about, right, you kind of have an overarching theme. It was more football, less downtime, closer games, all of that, everything that it doesn't matter what league it is. We all want those close, exciting games. But how can we tweak some of the rules to ensure that our games are going to be exciting and the fans are going to be engaged in those types of things? And we didn't feel like we needed to reinvent the wheel. We had a great foundation, what we did in 2020. And there were some things that we felt like we could tweak. And with the USFL, look, more football is great for everybody. And, it was never a thing where, we got to be different. We've got to, we have to stick to the core of, the game itself. And the game is so amazing. And we didn't want to, migrate so far away from football to what everyone's used to seeing. But we felt like there were some things that we could tweak to make it even better. And we feel like we're in a good place.
Was it helpful seeing some of these long arching changes kind of over the whole course of a season, to be able to see kind of more of a sample size of that?
Yeah, no question, because we didn't have a great big sample size in 25 weeks, and everything was positive. It was really one of my first experiences where people looked at officiating and rules in a different way. I mean, it's a very negative environment a lot of the time, and it was positive. And this is cool. We get to listen in and see what's happening in the replay booth, and they're using Xbox remote. It was just kind of cool to see that reaction, when typically we don't get that reaction in officiating and rules. So to see things that went through the USFL season, and it's all just learnings for everybody. And how can we create more opportunities for players and coaches, and it's not just players and coaches and officials, it's athletic trainers and equipment managers and all of the people behind the scenes that go into putting on football games and giving those people more opportunities.
So we're talking about some of the tweaks here, and we kind of have it broken up into some sections here. So some officiating questions, going from 8 personnel back in 2.0 here to 7, more the NFL alignment thought process behind that here in 2023.
Yeah, I think as we look at professional football and the differences between college and professional football, especially here in the United States, 7 officials felt like the right number. We're going to incorporate replay is going to be more involved in certain situations. So we felt like we could cover. And also with the ball spotter, really in 2020, we felt like having that ball spotter, bringing the ball spotter back and managing the ball mechanics would allow us to go to the NFL setup. And a lot of these officials that we're going to be using are prospective NFL officials. The NFL is looking at them, scouting at them. So to give them an opportunity to work 7 official mechanics helps them in their progression in their careers. So we just felt like that was an opportunity to help the officials. We didn't feel like we were losing anything in terms of coverages, and we felt like that was the right decision.
One of the big changes this time was obviously incorporating back the challenge, right? Coach's challenge. Thought process bringing that back?
Yeah, this was something that we've discussed when I was with the NFL and the competition committee. And I remember Bill Belichick bringing this up and other coaches, is that, look, I've got a limited number of challenges. why am I restricted in what I can challenge? As long as I understand that, look, if the video doesn't support making a change, I live with that, and I lose a timeout and I lose the challenge, and we can all move on. And we've never really done it at the NFL. Like, we tried pass interference in 2019 and some other things. And we just said, rather than try to take the rule book and create another subset of plays that you could challenge, and then it gets more complicated, it's pretty simple. It's, you could challenge any officiating decision you want. And if we look at it in the command center and we see that that it is a mistake and we need to change it, we'll change it. If it's not a mistake, we're going to leave it as is, and you only get one chance. So with the coaches, they know they only have that one opportunity. You don't win and keep it. So you've got to hold that for what you feel is a critical moment in the game. And we're excited about that, to see what we learn from this process. What do they challenge? When do they challenge? How do they utilize that? So I think we're excited to see what we get this season.
Some pushback we've gotten from some people covering it is, you're asking these, sometime first-time head coaches, now you got to legislate the game as well. Concern of kind of being able to balance that versus just being able to be a head coach out there?
Yeah, there's no question. Look, being a head coach at any level, there's so many layers to it. And that's one of the things we talk about. I'm a part of the NCAA rules committee and being a part of those discussions. And I'll tell you, those coaches, right, they don't want necessarily to change to an NFL model where more is put on them, right? Because they have so much going on. And in college, right, the replay official can stop the game at any point and the coach has a challenge, but they rarely use it. And so they don't want that additional responsibility. But look, these coaches are excited. They love it. They really do. Every coach, all of our 8 head coaches really love that part, because for us, it's another layer. We've got great officials. But the game is so fast and officials aren't perfect, right? So there's going to be situations where there might be a mistake, and we feel like we've got layers in place to correct the mistakes that could have a significant impact on the outcome of the game. And the coaches appreciate that. I think they're excited about it, and we'll see how it goes.
We cover the CFL as well. There's been a lot of, this season and roughing the passer, kind of all these different things. Yeah, we said, hey, there's a league up here. You could, challenge a lot of this stuff. Did you guys have any communications with any of the CFL people about how do you implement challenges for things that aren't normal?
Yeah, a lot of collaboration. There were a lot of early on in the early stages in terms of when we really just started up with the XFL 3.0. There was a lot of conversations with the CFL, and their rules are, I'm certainly not going to sit here and say I'm an expert on the CFL rules. I've got a pretty good grasp, and some of their rules are really interesting. It's a different game, right? You have a wider field. You're playing with more players. You have, less downs. It's all, there's some major differences that make their rules fit in their game versus, whether it's the NFL or college or spring football, XFL, USFL. So absolutely, we looked at and we presented to our coaches a couple of times a couple of CFL rules. One was, in the CFL, you end a quarter with a play. The time doesn't run out. And we presented that to our coaches to see what they thought. Ultimately, there wasn't a consensus to go that route, but we thought that was interesting enough to present to our coaches. And so we had a lot of collaboration and looked at their rules. And there's some really interesting rules that work for the CFL. And it might be something we look at in the future.
But in terms of the actual challenge, like mechanics and all of that, about when to use that, just because that is a way more technical part of their game where you are able to spot a lot more of those challenges. Any of that when you're adding the challenge in here?
Yeah, we looked at that as well. But again, this is new in terms of challenging anything and everything. And so again, it's going to be, we don't know what we don't know yet. And I think this is going to be something it's incumbent upon us who are going to be making decisions to be consistent and to set a consistent standard as to, hey, so the clubs know, the teams, the head coaches know that, okay, that I have an opportunity to get that one changed, where that one, we're not going to waste the challenge because we know where they've been with a decision like that. It's just not obvious. We're going to leave it alone. So that's on us to make sure that we provide that consistent standard in that direction. And that's what we'll do.
So we have some tech questions here. Is the replay technology going to be the same with Hawkeye?
No, so we're going to be using Bolt 6, which is another replay system, and we're really excited about Bolt 6 because it's all cloud-based. And so this will be the first time that I believe in North America that we'll be using a cloud-based replay system. And it's not significantly different in terms of the mechanics, and we're going to be getting all the camera feeds, and we'll have the ability to play them back and piece angles together. So very similar to what you see in other replay systems, I think. But again, the biggest difference is that this is cloud-based. There's less infrastructure. There's less of that, that hardware, and we're really excited to work with them as a partner.
This is how you tell this question's from my researcher here. Did you look at the National Rugby League in Australia and their replay bunker? You consulted with them back a few years ago?
Yeah, we did. I mean, I haven't connected. I haven't been there, unfortunately, but yeah, we had some good collaboration with rugby, and those guys are great, and they do a great job. And again, we're studying everyone. I've been talking to the European League of American Football. I mean, there's so many leagues out there, not just here in the United States, out in the world, that have been doing different things and have different mechanics, and you can really learn from them. So, that's an opportunity. I'm hoping to get out to, Australia and New Zealand and see everybody down under and see what, they've got going on.
Yeah, I guess they have the replay bunker, and I was looking at videos and stuff of all that. In terms of the Riedel, the communications and stuff, same here in 2023 as it was in 2020, like same number of players and stuff, and everybody being involved.
Yeah, we're going to have the same system. It's going to be up to the clubs. There's going to be a number of players that they can use to have the receiver in the helmet, and it's up to the clubs and how they distribute that. So it's going to be, where in the NFL you just have the quarterback and the one player on defense. We'll have multiple players that'll have the ability to hear that play call, and again, that just helps with the communication, and it helps keep the game moving, right? With a 35-second play clock versus 40 seconds, having the ability to communicate helps avoid delay of game penalties, get lined up, in a more efficient manner. And so we're still using that same system.
Still no cutoff with the communication?
Correct. Yeah, no cutoff. It'll stay open.
Is the league still going to be monitoring those comms for like cheating and kind of all that stuff?
Yeah, there's always monitoring in place. And that's something that obviously you have guidelines and protocols in place, and you have to monitor to make sure that we're following those protocols. And we're going to have a lot of, what I'm excited about is the access that the fans are going to have, and to be able to listen in and hear those play calls and listen into what the players are talking about, the coach and the quarterback, the officials, and the amongst each other, replay. And we have controls in place to make sure, because look, the reality is that communication sometimes isn't fit for everyone's ears. And we want to make sure that it's a really cool, look behind the curtain, but it doesn't show anyone in a bad light. And then I think that's the goal, and I think that's where we'll be.
Yeah, sometimes some of the sideline communication wasn't fit for the TV as well.
Oh yeah. It's an emotional game, and that's part of it. And we understand that when you're going to give fans that access, you might hear something here or there that might not be, what we're used to hearing on certain broadcasts. Yeah.
Consideration down the line to have refs be able to hear the play calls to help officiate?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we've talked about for a long time, because it certainly would help. Look, if the officials, even if they knew it was just run versus pass, it would help, from their pre-snap mechanics and their positioning. The concern has always been if the officials know, do they do something to tip off the defense, and then you start studying the officials and their movements and things like that. So there's always been that concern. I don't know. It's something that we'll continue to look at and discuss. I don't think it's on the horizon in the near future, but it might be something down the line.
Some timing questions here, and then we have kickoff, and I promise I'll get you out of here every single time. I appreciate it. In terms of the play clock, the changes this year, obviously maintaining consistency, was it also done to make the clock operator easier to officiate?
Yeah, I think we wanted to we liked the 2020 version with it was different. It was new. We hadn't done that with the ball spotter actually winding the clock, and we timed it. And on average, we were 7 to 8 seconds from the end of the play. So we really were at a 32, 33 second play clock in 2020. And we wanted to go to more of a traditional from a game flow. We weren't there's not going to be any variable in terms of maybe there's a long play where the ball spotter has to go, further downfield versus a shorter play. And so now it'll be what all the fans are used to in terms of the play ends, the play clock starts. It'll be a 35-second clock in terms of just keeping the game moving and that whole goal of less downtime, because there's a lot of downtime during a football game. That's just the reality of it. There's no way around it. But if we can just continue to keep that flow and that consistent, play, I think it'll show up as a more engaging and more exciting game.
Yeah, we were at that. It was because we're Seattle. We were at like that Dragons game in 2020, the first home game. I was like, I don't understand this play clock at all at the end of the game. It was like, because I think we were trying to hold on to the lead. I'm like, this is just taking forever.
Yeah, the end that was confused. I think in theory it was a good idea, but we kind of got away from that again with that 5-second hold, because that did create. And the goal was, to conserve time, and then you get comebacks. But it was different, and we didn't hate it, but we just felt like, okay, let's switch it up. We'll go to the 2-minute. In the last 2 minutes, we'll go to the first down, stopping the clock like what they do in college throughout the game, and we'll see where that leaves us.
I know the big concern in 2020 was getting like the 3 hour. We want the game under 3 hours and fitting into time slots. Do you still think with all the clock changes that's going to be feasible?
Yeah, and we don't really have we want to keep the games. There's a window, but it's not like if we go over a little bit over 3 hours, if it's an exciting game, and I think that tends to be a misconception in terms of, whether it's NFL or college games tend to be a little longer, obviously because of halftime and some of their timing rules. But if it's an exciting game, no one really cares how long it goes. It's those games where it's choppy and the stops and starts, and maybe it's not that exciting. So we feel like with the changes we made, in 2020, and we only made a couple of minor tweaks, we feel like we won't be much different than where we were in 2020 in terms of game length.
In terms of the new play clock and everything, the kneel down period increased from 1 minute in 2020 to 1:45. Was that a byproduct, or did you intend to make it more like the NFL?
I think it was just more like the NFL. I think we just wanted to try to, again, keep it more traditional in terms of what people are used to. And I think we feel like we're in a good place. I don't think we're going to drastically. The goal, whenever you're making timing changes, you want to make sure you don't lose plays, because that's your plays. That's your game. And you don't want to make so many timing changes to where you go from, an NFL game might average 155 plays. If you make a bunch of changes, you don't want to go to 150 or 148. You want to maintain that healthy number of plays. And we think we're in a good place.
You think you can average, because it said the USFL averaged 158 plays per game. 2020 XFL averaged 157 using the slower comeback period, but you believe you can maintain the same number of plays?
Yeah, I think we'll be in that 150 to 155 range. I think that's the goal.
And then we talked about the USFL being able to see all that with their 35-second play clock and you being able to see it over the season. Do you think, did that give you the confidence you could avoid like delay of game stuff and be able to kind of maintain that going?
Yeah, no question. And I think with the communication and having the skilled players and other players be able to get that communication, we don't feel like we're going to have a lot of delayed games. And obviously, we're going to work with our teams and make sure they get lined up correctly, and we give them an opportunity to do that. But when it is a delay game, then it is, and we have to call it. But I think we're going to be in a good place.
And then in terms of the kickoff stuff, for the 4th and 15, that's something that's brought back now. That was like the AAF, and then it was the flip the field, I think, in fan control football. They did all that. Concern with that's always player fatigue. If they're going down and then you decide to go for 4th and 15 to keep the play going. Any concern about that with player fatigue and how you guys are going to address that?
Yeah, everything we do, any rule we look at, any rule change, player safety, health and safety is obviously the top priority. So I think that was part of the reason why the 4th and 15 is a fourth quarter only option. It's not like something where, hey, our offense is rolling. They can't stop us. We're just gonna go for it in the second quarter. And again, because that defense has to stay on the field. And so we felt the fourth quarter only when the team needs it. And look, 4th and 15 is not easy. It's not easy to convert. We looked at the numbers, the onside kick in the NFL traditionally. I know they've had some dips in recent years, but it's a 10 to 12% success rate, and fourth and 15 in the NFL over that same time period is right around that type of success. So we feel like it doesn't give you a better chance or a worse chance. But we felt fourth quarter only was the right time, was the window for it, and we didn't want to do it throughout the game.
Yeah, and with the safety of the onside kick, and like you said, the percentages of the completion, doing this 4th and 15, allowing the offense and defense to control the game versus special teams, was that any consideration?
I don't think we really feel like we want all three phases to be a part. That was one of the big reasons behind the kickoff changes in 2020, because what we saw, and I've been a part of it at both the college and the NFL level, is that kick returns tend to have a higher rate of injury. And so what both college and NFL in terms of the rules committees have done is they've made changes to increase the number of touchbacks. I mean, that's the reality. And because less returns, more touchbacks, the less injuries. We wanted to look at, okay, how can we keep the return in the game, but make the play safer? We want to keep all three phases as part of it. Obviously getting rid of the extra point kick, but yeah, we really feel like, offense, defense, special teams are all a big part. We just felt like 4th and 15 was something we wanted to try. The NFL is looking at that. We have good communication with the NFL and in terms of things that they, are looking at. And if we have an opportunity to try it out and help them get some learnings from it, we're open to do that.
The XFL overtime, obviously big, exciting part of it. We never got to see it back in the day. We got to see, so USFL adopted part of that. They did their overtime with the 2, which seemed to more favor the run teams. Do you like doing it the overtime with the 5, even though it may be harder to score?
Yeah, we liked the 5. We felt like the 5 was, most of our teams were going for 2 from the 5 in 2020. We feel like that gives you, look, you could still run the ball. You could, it certainly opens up more of the passing game further back. And we just felt like the dive up the middle is that, or what we're seeing now with the quarterback sneak and everybody gets behind and push. Is that really an exciting play? So we felt like the 5 was a good spot. It gives both teams a chance. And what's exciting about that is we don't have these debates about, well, that, this team didn't get the ball. Every play is either a score or a stop, and we feel like that's a good place to be.
I know part of the 5 rounds of overtime in 2020 had to do with the spreads and sport books and stuff like that, and with the 2 points or whatever, all that. Like going down to 3, did you guys consult sports books and kind of any of the philosophy go into that to go down to 3?
I think the biggest reason for the change to 3 was just, again, the health and safety and not extending the games. Because you're playing 60 minutes and now you've got to play another 5, 1 play possession series. And we just felt 3, we'll have a good chance to end it in 3, if not, especially from the 5 where it's not an automatic. And we'll alternate until we get a winner. So really that was more about player safety. Obviously, the gaming and the sports betting, that's a big part of football today. And that's always a consideration. But really, that one was just trying to make sure that we're not extending the game unnecessarily for our players.
Do you feel like the coaches this time around, in terms of like going for 3, a lot of these little minute changes, get kind of the strategy involved? And obviously we still got to go into training camp and stuff, but we famously had Jim Zorn go in and wasn't supposed to go, being able to know the success rates of the 1, 2, or 3 and the different strategies?
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the evolution of analytics, and that word is such a lightning rod, but even over the last 3 years, absolutely, they're going to be looking at all of that. And, what are our chances in this situation? And I think that's just a part of it, right? The analytics is one piece, and then you have to look at all the other factors and make a decision. I'm excited. These coaches are just fired up. I mean, I don't know what we're going to see in terms of, are they going to be going for 3 more? Are they going, certainly there's times when it's just necessary to go for 3, but I think we're going to see more teams that are going to, we like our chances even earlier in the game to go for 3. So, and that was part of it, the 9-point game is no longer a 2-score game. And that's all part of, right, giving that team an opportunity to come back, where you don't have a game that's over with, 5 minutes to go. And then, you lose people that don't want to watch anymore. And that's all part of it.
Well, June Jones, I think, has already said he intends to go for 3 every time, which is good for us, for my Seattle Sea Dragons. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, we'll see. And I know that you're Jim Haslett. I have never seen a head coach at any level more excited about his team's uniforms than Jim Haslett is about the Seattle Sea Dragons uniforms. He is so happy and excited about the uniform. It's incredible.
That will make one Seattle Sea Dragons fan. I will tell you, the wide consensus of us Sea Dragons fans, not the biggest hit. So I am glad that Jim Haslett is excited about it.
He's excited. I'm telling you, he's excited.
Last question for me. Thank you, rapid fire through all this. I didn't even realize this was the thing. The PSI and the ball back in 2020, no restrictions on that. You were able to have less inflated for quarterbacks to play with. And I got sent a clip of the reporter on the sideline showing all this. Any PSI restrictions on the balls here in 2023?
Yeah, it'll be the normal NFL rule. It'll be, we want to keep the ball, the integrity of the ball. So it's between 12.5 and 13.5. And I know I got to brush up. I mean, we haven't, I've tried to put that chapter of my history behind me, Deflategate. And that was, I've heard enough about PSIs back then, but it'll be the NFL rule.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. I was sent a clip and I saw, and they were talking about, I think it was Taylor Cornelius being able to grip the ball better with the lower PSI. So that was a very important question, I guess we wanted to have.
But you have that range, just like, you can be on the low legal range or the high legal range, and that's up to the clubs, but the officials will, they'll check it.
Well, Dean, I really appreciate it today. Rapid fire, got through as many as I could here. Thank you so much for your time. It's crazy in the week of New Year's and everything else. I really, really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And we'll have to do this again during the season.
It'll be good. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Well, I already kind of waved in the new year here in the intro of the show. Just got done talking with Dean Blandino, and now I think this is a really good spot today. We have USFL historian Paul Reeths on the show, kind of year in review here and everything else. Paul, how are you and the holidays and everything else going first off?
Awesome. Doing really, really well. Been fun to look back at 2022 and all the progress we've seen with the USFL completing its season and with the XFL solidifying its plans.
It was mostly solidified here. I said I never could have imagined, like 2 years ago, a year ago or 2 years ago. It really does feel like we're limping to February. I sense no. I mean, before we get into everything, I sense no momentum right now behind XFL in any way.
I think that maybe some of the underfunding is showing through a little bit. They have made, some significant progress with hires, with drafting teams and identities. We're still waiting for a stadium in Las Vegas, which really is kind of that's the 400-pound elephant in the room. I mean, it's just they need to get that taken care of sooner rather than later.
So I'm wearing my Spring League jersey. I already poured out a little bit for Brian Woods at the top of the show here. Big news first off, and then we'll kind of get into all the year in review. Came as a shock to me. I mean, USFL newsroom reported it. It got sent to me. I texted Brian. I mean, we correspond not semi-regularly enough that I could text him and say like, hey, what's going on here? So that's all confirmed, him stepping down. My feeling is he's got kids and family and wants to spend time with that. I don't sense any like he was pushed out or they disagreed or I just don't sense anything like that. I didn't hear. What was your take, Brian Woods stepping down as president of football operations?
And to be honest, I've been, pretty critical of Mr. Woods because of a couple of his past efforts and what I felt was kind of a low buck approach to it, especially in regards to the players, in regards to paying players. I was also pretty critical as a fan of the original USFL on the acquisition or supposed acquisition of the trademarks, just filing trademark claims when there was prior use, which I knew about, and which I think that the judge correctly determined, reestablished the original USFL's ownership of those trademarks. So I've been pretty critical there. You look back at 2022, they reached a settlement, with the old USFL. The Fox reached that settlement with the old USFL guard. That was kind of what, to my knowledge, Brian Woods brought to the table to Fox. So I don't know how well that played, and you could be right. It could just be something as simple as Mr. Woods wanting to spend some more time with his family. I think that Fox probably is really okay with having all of its people in charge going forward. So that it could be something as simple as that too.
Do you think, and I've seen comments like, all Brian brought to this was the trademarks, right? I would argue this bare bones approach, that was kind of his bread and butter, right? I mean, he went to Fox, said, I have this, we've done the spring league. I've said this before. I basically ran the league with cardboard in my garage for years. Like, what is Brian's legacy with this new USFL?
He certainly I'm guessing that he brought a good deal of experience, just as you said, in logistical aspects. I don't know how much of a benefit that was to Fox, being around pro football all the time and being able to hire essentially whoever wants to take care of those things. It's really difficult to determine what Mr. Woods' skill set was and what he brought to the league, because the league has been pretty tight-lipped about a lot of that stuff. So I don't see the league missing much of a beat going into 2023.
Yeah, that's the other question I've seen. Is like, do we need a new president? I've seen, Moose. I think Daryl Moose Johnston just was already doing a lot of that redundancy there. Maybe, do you think he just slides into more of? I mean, we don't even need to change his title, but just he kind of carries on that torch.
And as a public face, he's much more suited to that position. So I think that could very well be what happens.
Did I ever tell you this story on here when I crashed at Brian's suite at the USFL kickoff game? Did I ever tell you that?
Yeah.
I mean, it was because I talked with Brian like on the phone, and we've done Zooms, and it was always like he never was on, like he's like driving and he's on the Zoom call or whatever. But yeah, being able to stand face to face with him, I was a little inebriated, but being able to crash his suite, it was fun. I mean, it's a fascinating thing. Like you said, I don't think they miss a beat, but I don't know if that, like, is that a slight on Brian that they're able to go on now? I don't know.
Yeah, and I do want to kind of put the brakes on that, at least from my perspective. I honestly don't know what he brought to the table as far as a skill set, as far as relationships, as far as everything that it took to get the league off the ground and to keep it motoring through the season. Again, my main beef was with that acquisition of the trademarks, which I felt was inadequate from the very start. And now, I think the league is in a better position to move forward.
Clean break there. I had because you haven't been on. You joined us. We had our XFL draft show, which feels like a millennia ago. You came on for part of that. We haven't had you sit down for a while, solo kind of like this. What do you make of Detroit rumored, right? I mean, I had the USFL CBA, the United Football Players on that negotiated the CBA, like basically confirming like, yeah, we're playing in Detroit, Memphis, Birmingham. What do you make of the three hubs?
It's certainly a step forward. So I think that if you looked at what was the most improvable thing about the USFL last year, it was the game atmospheres in 3 out of the 4 games every weekend, in which they looked like glorified practices because there was nobody in the stands. So now, even with just 3 hubs, you're probably setting up a circumstance where the majority of games are going to be played in front of some home fans. That, I think, is going to take care of a lot of the atmosphere issues that the league had the first year.
Do you think my theory, it's a non-zero connection that we had Steve Earhart involved in the lawsuit. He is like the executive director of the Liberty Bowl that plays in Memphis. I just watched the Liberty Bowl, was on last night. I saw part of it before the Kraken game. USFL now using that stadium. I know Steve doesn't like own the stadium or run the stadium. To me, there's too much smoke there that here we settled this lawsuit and now we have a hub set up in Memphis. What is your take on that? Because I've heard I'm crazy and I've heard that I make sense.
I thought that it was interesting myself. I don't have any inside information on that. I do want to just give a shout out to Steve, though, because he was dealt quite a hand for yesterday with the water problems in Memphis, and still they pulled off really a bowl game to remember.
When I had a player message me months ago now saying, hey, there's going to be 3 hubs, talking about the Memphis move, and they go, yeah, they're going to be playing at, the Liberty, whatever Liberty Stadium or whatever the heck it's called. I go, there's no way that is not at least that he, connected the 2 people there of, hey, here, you talk to this person. I mean, they just settled less than 6 months ago, it feels.
Right. And, like I said, I don't have any inside information on that, but it does seem to be a rather large coincidence.
In terms of, we're here end of 2022. In my, obviously, time of covering this, a pretty significant year, USFL season 1, XFL here, the buildup. Like, you've covered everything all the way back through the original USFL. Thoughts on the year as a whole here? We're December 29th.
Super exciting. I mean, from an alternative football standpoint, what year can you remember that packed in as much as 2022 did? And here we are on the precipice. We're 7 weeks out from the supposed XFL kickoff, which will lead us all the way through, when you include the CFL, to the Grey Cup on November 19th. Just wrap your head around that. From February through November, alternative football. So, all of 2022 has kind of set the stage for, I think, what we're going to see in 2023. And it's a pretty exciting time.
I know we were promised with the AAF and all of that and these spring football wars, and, obviously that never really came to pass with the AAF fizzling out. Like, are we set up for that now? Like, what are you kind of gauging here, looking forward to?
We've already seen, I think, a little bit of the fallout of 2 leagues being set to compete against each other, in that the USFL Players Association and Fox reached an agreement pretty quickly without a lot of public rancor, at least. I would guess that they owe a little bit of that to the existence of the XFL and the XFL's announced salary structure. So, again, we're seeing an increase in costs, which is what you see with competition. You're seeing one side able to play off against the other side, which you always see in competition. So, when you look down the road, how long can that go on? I don't think we're going to see any kind of NFL, AFL, or NFL, USFL kind of bidding war. That just doesn't make sense in these circumstances, especially with 2 centrally controlled entities. But you are going to see a little bit of an upward pressure to attract talent, so that you give just a little bit more than the other side gives in order to attract a little bit better talent. You'll see that likely at the quarterback position first, but really dropping all the way down through the rosters. So you look down 3-5 years, is there pressure for these organizations at some point to see if they can work together? And I think that's a natural look ahead that presumes a lot of things, including that both organizations are still alive in 3 to 5 years, which is a huge ask in alternative football.
It amazes me that we haven't even kicked off one of the leagues yet. And comments, I was on another, John, one of our listeners, he hosts a YouTube show. You were talking, can they coexist? And, all the comments online and the merging and all of that. But with the the AFL and the NFL, this was decades, right? Of kind of, this was all before my lifetime of all this, but this wasn't in the scheme of the world. I know people, and it worked and they did the Super Bowl and stuff, but it feels very different.
Yeah. And you look at that, you look at the Super Bowl, that was post agreement. They had they had the framework of their agreement to merge completed at that time. Essentially, as soon as the American Football League signed its television deal with NBC, it was guaranteed survival. Tex Schramm of the Dallas Cowboys, representing the NFL, said, I knew that was the deal, that we were either going to be locked into an increasing cost spiral in professional football, or we needed to merge. And everybody knew that they needed to merge in order to make pro football possible, so that the cost wouldn't get so far ahead of the income. We are, I think, completely out of that era now as far as the Major League Sports goes. They just get too much money from television and media rights. It would take a weird combination of billionaires who probably couldn't work together to challenge anybody. But on something like a developmental league level, can that still happen? Can you still get into the kind of a war to where it would make sense to merge? Again, we're probably quite far away from that. Both sides will be looking at the other side for signs of weakness. Are they going to make it? Is there a reason for us to do anything? And until both sides feel that the other is around for the long term, any kind of merger talk or accommodations is probably quite far down the road.
And this could be either, for the collapse of one or the merger, whatever. But, I'm trying to think in my head, right? You would have increased wages, right? Like you're saying, trying to bid on talent, sheer number of talent, right? There's only X number of players that are suitable, that we deem, I know there's thousands of players every year, but that we deem suitable to play. You would have is there enough attention, right? To have two concurrent leagues running back to back versus what would, for you, where do you see maybe one of those the warning signs the most, or is something else I'm not thinking of?
I think that the XFL has essentially already admitted that it needs a little bit more capital. And the USFL has kind of done the same thing. So who's able to bring in more partners? That's certainly going to be a huge part of the equation for both leagues. The USFL, they had a good setup in Birmingham as far as their cost structure. They reached agreements with, I think it was 3 different municipal organizations in order to make that very, very affordable. Now you add a couple more hubs. While it does, I think, increase the overall attractiveness of their product, especially with fans in the stands, there's going to be an expense associated with that. There's also going to be further expense associated with the deal that they've just reached with the Players Association. And it's not just the base salaries, but it's kind of those incidentals too, where, okay, now we're giving you enough to live in a hotel instead of having to split that cost. It's a lot of the ancillary things that can add up rather quickly. A little bit that's a little bit harder to see. Those costs start piling up. But certainly you would look for, on the income side, them bringing in more partners of substance, both sides.
Are you surprised? I have a couple of follow-ups here. Are you surprised that we still don't have anyone to take on the USFL franchise? I know the FedEx guy was instrumental to kind of getting them into Memphis. His name escapes me at the moment, but he has expressed interest. We don't have anybody bringing on. Obviously, XFL, they're searching for that. But either league, but especially USFL, where basically the first year was here, invest in the team, will you please? And we still don't have anything.
I'm not surprised necessarily, and that doesn't mean that there haven't been negotiations behind the scenes. A guy like the chairman of FedEx, he could do this. He's done this. He's actually done this with the Memphis Mad Dogs, so he could pull it off. Whether he wants to or not is another story. It could be he's looking at there could be some back and forth going on. I'm not surprised, because I think it was a little bit difficult to get a really good handle on the product. If you're buying a football team, if the product is actually buying a football team, from what we saw in Birmingham, it's a little bit difficult. I could see investors holding off. All right, let's see what this looks like, especially from a cost standpoint, when we're flying from city to city, Let me get an idea of what that looks like.
In terms of going back to the CBA, USFL now, and both leagues, we did the whole breakdown last week. Both leagues competitive with the CFL for starting salaries, right? And we still even had CFL people arguing this week, online, and this doesn't mean anything, but both leagues being competitive, USFL negotiating so that I don't think there's any surprise our starting salary is higher than the XFL starting salary. Now, XFL, I think if you win 3 games on a team, that puts you over the starting salary for the USFL. But it's like when you're advertising anything, prices start at $9.99 or whatever, you want. But what did you make of that and that careful negotiation to put the starting salaries at least above on the USFL side?
I think it's going to really fall to a lot of players on convenience. How close can I stay to home or to people I know or to where I went to college? So, the CFL, I can understand why they won't necessarily be concerned about alternative leagues. How many alternative leagues has the CFL seen over its lifetime? There's just really no reason for them to panic. In fact, it might be good for the CFL to have more Canadian players actually able to compete for some of those positions. So the CFL is going to be fine. From an American player standpoint, many of them will look at the conveniences of staying closer to home. So even with the salaries pretty close, you would probably see them being drawn to the XFL or USFL.
In terms of XFL v USFL and the price comparisons there, is that enough to sway one way or another?
I think it's so close. It's like the indoor leagues when one wanted to pay $200 a game and the other $250. Well, is any of that going to make a difference if you have to move to Fort Wayne? If you're able to play close to home, able to play maybe with people or under a coach that will probably be the bigger draw. And again, a lot of these players are looking to move up. So what is my best step up? What is the coaching pedigree that I'm going to be playing under, both as the head coach and with the assistant coaches? That to me, the players who are really serious about moving up are going to be looking at those coaches and assistant coaches.
Have you had, now that and I can't remember if we talked about this in the past, timeline, getting, like you said, if I want to get back to the NFL, I think Max sent me an article this week talking with Luis Perez and why he opted to go to the XFL and basically saying the timeline worked out better, right? Well, you get out of the USFL, you have like 3 weeks to get on. Any updated thought of that? And then I want to follow up with, the players jumping from the USFL to the XFL and vice versa. But timeline, any updated thoughts now that we've seen the one season complete?
I think that's an excellent point. The difference in time of year with the seasons, with the XFL starting in February and the USFL starting in mid-April. Is the XFL going to be able to take advantage of that post-Super Bowl? I mean, February and March in a lot of the country is still a rather rotten time to be outside. So you potentially have more people in front of TV sets than you will in June, for instance, when the USFL is in the heart of its season. So I think we are going to see maybe a little bit of a shakedown. Which time of the year works better? Will one or the other league adjust based on what they see working better? Where does that leave us? My suspicion has always been that the post-Super Bowl timeframe is going to be a little bit better for TV ratings, and that really is what's super important here.
Were you surprised? And I'm sure we talked about this on the draft show, but I don't remember. It was that day was like a mishmash in my mind. Seeing Luis Perez jump, right? Seeing Kyle Sloter jump. Obviously, we've had some of the guys sign with the XFL opt to go back to the USFL now and the CBA and all of that. We'll see here, December 31st. This is the big who decides, and maybe friend of the show, Brian Scott. Oh my God, that's Brian Scott's music. But were you surprised with this, that it was already so quick that it's already NWO versus WCW or whatever?
No, not at all. I mean, they're competing over the same group of players. Yeah, that kind of that next group of players. So you are always going to see some of this. And again, we will have players look back and forth, and there might be an opportunity to play under a certain coach that attracts a player more than another in a certain situation. Maybe somebody is really, really good with spending 8 out of 10 weeks in Birmingham because they went to school in Alabama. It's a great situation for them, only having to fly out a couple of times a year. That might lead them to the USFL. Somebody, on the other hand, who, I didn't pass very much in college, and this team that has June Jones as their offensive coordinator, I'm going to be able to pass a lot. That's where I'm going, because I can develop my skill set and prepare for the next level. So there's going to be a ton of different considerations. But I think, when you look at what is differentiating one league from the other, you probably hit it with that difference of seasons. One starting in February, guys can get ready, they can get going right away. That could be very important to a large group of players.
Can you put into context for, our listeners and, like me, I include myself in this as being dumb, but having both entities right now, like so well funded on both sides. We have funding, I know they're looking for more, but we have, Fox Sports, we have Redbird, we have all these people involved, and we're bringing in, the NFL Hard Knocks draft, Ben McCallum, or I can never pronounce his last name. They just hired this week, the HBO Hard Knocks guy for the XFL. We're hiring all these people. We have Moose, to have a time in history with two well-funded entities like this going back and forth.
We have such a hard time finding one well-funded entity. In fact, you'd honestly have to go back to the original XFL having, Vince McMahon's money behind it. You had no real thought that they would default. And they did. They made it through the whole season. And when the partner pulled out with NBC, they shut it down, but they shut it down in a very orderly fashion. If I'm not mistaken, they paid off everything or nearly everything. So well-funded for sure. Since then, no, we have not had anything, and that's more than 20 years ago. The second edition of the XFL was kind of in the same boat as the first edition of the XFL, but then you had the pandemic, and they were losing tons of money, and definitely a different era. But this is so bizarre having two entities. Do we have really any doubt that one or the other is going to play a season this year? I don't. Even with a perceived deficiency in funding, I think they're going to find a way to pull it off.
Before we go, I asked people, and I've recorded the whole voicemail thing after this. Favorite moment for you of the year, least favorite moment from 2022 in the world of all football?
Favorite moment was probably the USFL championship. Tremendous atmosphere, terrific game, guys showcasing abilities. I have to say they pulled off a heck of a show there. I feel like if I look back, and especially on your show, I've been a little bit critical of the USFL, but they really did end strong. And also, I think they learned some lessons from that first season, and that's really heartening to see. Where we're at with the XFL Las Vegas situation, I think is really, really weird. So I would put that certainly among the lowlights, because I don't get it to a degree. I think you have your places to play, right off. And I think especially with Vegas. So, they need to get that buttoned down.
Yeah, to me, like I said, I always thought that this 2-year wait period for the XFL would be worth it, right? Like, hey, and Mike Mitchell's been on, and we've had people like, it's going to be a year of build up, and we're going to have all these behind the scenes. We're going to have all this stuff. To me, that's like, it was this thing that was promised that we never really saw here. We have the supplemental draft coming out this Sunday on New Year's Day. I'm sure they're just going to post it on the website, and then we're going to move forward to a training camp. Like, I just never really got any sort of climax.
No, and they're hurtling toward the start of their season. They're 7 weeks away, so there's not a whole lot of time left. It's hard to fulfill that promise, because, like, what are they going to do? Are we going to have a concert at every game, or how can we really fulfill that But I think having that lead time is super important in order to lay down the foundation. A lot of times when you see these leagues launch and they're scrambling behind the scenes to get things done, even over the first few weeks of the season, if you can avoid some of that in the lead up, and I hope that the XFL has, with the exception of Las Vegas, that they'll be that much further ahead.
Are you surprised that and I don't want to keep hammering on this, but it is interesting, with the 2 years the XFL had, and then like the 6 months the USFL or XFL had, and then the 6 months the USFL had, that basically they ended up kind of doing the same timeline of like, hey, schedule at this date and uniform at this date. Like XFL had so much more time, and it was still like 3 months out we get logos or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that stadium situation in Vegas, whatever, is holding up, everything. It's holding up the finalized schedule, and and it's holding up travel plans. And Vegas is a destination city, and all those kinds of things that it seems like the one thing that wasn't buttoned down is really holding back. Now, it's going to happen. There's going to be a TV schedule, which I'm guessing will be put out, a few weeks in advance. That's the important stuff. So they've got to make some good impressions when they're on TV. They've got to draw some ratings. They've got some great partners in that effort, as does the USFL. So, again, this is just the cornucopia of riches for an alt football fan. And yes, some of that is disappointing. We could be a little bit further ahead with this, but we have a cornucopia of riches for the alt football fan coming up in 2023.
Bold prediction from you before I let you go. I want something crazy. What are we seeing here in 2023? Bold prediction from Paul. We'll revisit this next year.
I am not huge on making predictions. My boldest prediction would be that both leagues make it through the season. That we should see that as a bold prediction given history.
Which is sad to say. It's just sad to say.
That is very true.
Well, Paul, I appreciate you hopping on week of New Year's Eve and, family and everything else. I'm sure crazy during the holidays. I really appreciate you taking the time out to chat today. It means a lot.
I appreciate you having me and watching the show grow this year, Reed, and wishing you all the success in 2023.
Thanks a lot. A huge special thanks to both of my guests today for coming on. Really appreciate Dean Blandino, courtesy of the XFL. Look at that. XFL approved guest coming on the Markcast, the world we live in. Really appreciate that, Dean. Crazy busy getting ready, all the football games this week, this weekend, everything else. Dean is a busy guy. I really appreciate that. Also, Paul Reeths coming on, balancing, family during the holidays, running Our Sports Central like he does. Everything else Paul has going on as well. Tremendously busy, both of our guests. Really appreciate that. And all of you guys for listening here all year. It's been a really good year. Lots of growth, lots of everything else. We can, got my noisemaker, so it wasn't too annoying at the beginning of the show. Have a handful of voicemails here. I did a call, favorite moments of 2022. We'll play the voicemails. I have not, looked at any of these, so hopefully nothing is too vulgar on here. And then have some comments to read before we go. Comment on the YouTube, favorite moment of 2022. And then what I would also like is predictions for 2023. And then we can circle back next year. I thought that'd be kind of cool. Maybe get Paul Reeths back on again next year. Hey, let's circle back. Make some predictions. Does the XFL, do we make it to 6 weeks? I think we'll make it to 6 weeks, but do any of that stuff. But yeah, please comment, build the algorithm, do all that stuff. Comment on the YouTube. Really appreciate that. First voicemail here coming up. Just got it in here before the wire. We have one from Max. We got Philip, Jenna, and then my wife Dorothy even left a voicemail. We'll see what that is. Let's see what Max has to say here. First off, rounding out 2022.
Hey, Reed, it's Max. My favorite moment has to be the USFL players, them getting their CBA set up and unionizing. I'm always happy for player victories. No matter what league it is, I don't care. I want the players to win. So very happy about that. Probably have to say my second favorite, though, is just seeing the XFL finally truly being back soon. You can feel it's real. My least favorite moment, I think it's got to be It's got to be the mess that happened with some of the USFL's opening launch with like the chip balls were kind of embarrassing with like the missed kicks and all that. Because of that, it was like it made the players look bad when in reality it wasn't necessarily their fault, and it just kind of sucks for them that happened. And that's about it, honestly. We look forward to 2023 and to watching this interview with Dean Blandino, because I've been anticipating that for a long time. Cheers.
Really appreciate that, Max. Enjoyed. Yeah, Max. Max gets credit or undue, I think, credit for being a big USFL hater sometimes, but always a proponent of the players. We like the CBA. We like the players getting compensated as much hate as I've gotten in the last couple of weeks about the USFL CBA as well. Always huge there. Yes, the chipped balls. I thought he said a vulgar word, but yes, the chipped balls going into the USFL kickoff. And yeah, Max helped me a lot behind the scenes, putting in work for Dean Blandino, getting some of those questions, some of the National Rugby of Australia. You can tell the questions that come from Max. Really appreciate that. Max rounding out the year. What's Philip have to say? Longtime listener Philip, coming from, hopefully he likes the new Houston Roughnecks jerseys.
Hey, Reed, Philip here. First time, second time. My favorite moment of 2022 at all football, obviously, is the Markcast. You and Mike Mitchell, when you guys get together, it's gold. Those are my favorite episodes. I like all the information drops that the XFL gave us. It made me feel like this thing is really going to happen. My least favorite, obviously, is how they gave us that information. I wish they would have done it in a more timely manner. But, I don't know, maybe there's things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about that prevented, that information getting to us in a timely manner. So you just got to trust the powers that be. I like all the uniforms. Roughneck uniform, I think, is the best one in the league. I don't like the helmet too much. I guess it's going to have to grow on me.
You're wrong.
But other than that, everything is good. We're moving forward. Like I said, probably my least favorite is how they got us the information. It just seemed very hodgy-podgy. But hey, stuff's coming out at the time of this recording. We still have no schedule. Vegas doesn't have a stadium, but we just need to remain hopeful. So let's get to February. Let's put some butts in the seats and let's play some XFL football, man.
Thank you, Philip. Really appreciate hearing Philip's voice on the podcast. Philip comments a lot. I always like to get that personal connection there. Philip, a longtime listener, owns one of the original XFL Markcast misprinted hats. Yeah, if you would have told me back 2 years ago, hey, we're going to be kind of just limping along here. We don't have a schedule. Don't have the stadium. I think the schedule is, I know it's all connected. I think the schedule is a bigger issue than the stadium right now, but we got to be able to plan this. It's just crazy to me, this year-long buildup and all this behind-the-scenes stuff, kind of everything that was promised. I don't know. I've learned at this point to never expect anything, supplemental draft, Sunday, New Year's Day. Okay. Like I have learned to kind of just avoid having any expectations. It's really hard. Philip remains hopeful that way. So I appreciate that. Let's see what Jenna has to say. Jenna out of California. Hope Jenna had a good holiday season here. New Year, getting ready for New Year's. Let's see what Jenna has to say.
Hey y'all, it's Jenna. Reed, Markcast, everyone. Happy holidays. So let's see. Best so far would definitely have to be Markcast interviewing the XFL owners, The Rock, Danny. That was so cool. I feel like that's the top for the Markcast. That was really awesome. Least favorite, definitely the Pittsburgh Maulers. Huge disappointment. Not too thrilled about Kirby Wilson still being there, but hopefully year 2 is a lot better. And then to end on a good note, positive note, the Red Blacks signing up Bob Dice. Hopefully, Red Blacks are gonna start doing better now. Let's get some home victories. Anyway, so yeah, hope everyone had a nice holiday. Everyone take care. Okay, bye.
Jenna, really appreciate it. Really appreciate all Jenna's longtime support. Jenna owns the first football giveaway. We had a Chad Ochocinco signed football. You tell me, more valuable football, Brian Scott or Chad Ochocinco? I don't know if that's a contest. I would like my boy Brian, B-Rye on that any day of the week. Really appreciate it. Yeah, Jenna with the Maulers. Jenna has the unfortunateness of picking really bad teams and then cheering for them very devoutly. We have the Buffalo Sabres that the Kraken here beat. I think they're doing better this year. Kraken beat them, I believe, 5-1. We have the Ottawa Red Blacks. Haven't had a home game victory in a couple of years. Pittsburgh Maulers, we all know the story there. And then really sad when the Dallas Cowboys get knocked out of the playoffs in the first round again. I just, spoiler alert, we'll see. But that could be week 18 here with the Commanders needing to get into the playoffs. Hopefully, Cowboys have clinched. Hopefully we rest everyone, Jenna, and then we can have a fair fight in the playoffs. But would really not like to see the Dallas Cowboys knock the Commanders out of the playoffs. Dorothy, my wife, this is curious. Dorothy left a voicemail. She was asking me, how do I leave a voicemail? I don't know if this is New Year's Eve related or anything else, but let's see what my wife, Dorothy, has to say.
Top football moments in my book. Watching Russell burn down the Broncos' kitchen. Chilly but fun times at the Grey Cup in Regina. And watching the Cougs get crushed by my Huskies in the Apple Cup. Go Dogs!
Go Dogs. Really appreciate that. My wife, yes. It was pretty cold in Regina, not maybe as cold as I think I expected it to be. It was bearable. It was cold though. And then, yes, the Russell Wilson burn down of everything. Nathaniel Hackett here being let go this week as well. Everything else, the craziness there. Dorothy, longtime Seahawk fan. Really appreciate that. And just all the support this year. Dorothy puts up with a lot of patience. Dorothy watches all the episodes. Really appreciate that for all of you guys behind the scenes that don't know that. And then before we get out of here today, I had posted on Twitter, posted a little video calling for voicemails. That's a good looking Kraken hat there. Just some comments here before we get out of here. John Hanley, a longtime listener, least favorite moment for him was the Garrett Marino tackle. That Garrett Marino, the bad boy of the CFL on the Saskatchewan Roughriders, going to the USFL. Not a big fan of that. I guess it's good to have players get second chances. We'll see what Garrett does in the USFL. I know he's a very passionate player. He blocks a lot of people on Twitter, but John Hanley, least favorite moment was Garrett Marino. Gary here, Gary, as always, leaving wonderful artwork. Really appreciate that. We're at the state fair. People are throwing. I'm dodging darts here. People are trying to hit the balloons. Very funny there. John B. They're all linked. Favorite all football moment: Canada qualifying for the World Cup. Least favorite: Canada getting drafted at the World Cup. Handball in the box preventing the goal. That's not a red card. I didn't watch a lot of the World Cup this year. I hope John enjoyed that. Voigt favorite, the jersey reveals. We like the jersey reveals. Still waiting. God, I hope we get the jerseys shipped before the 2022 season. Remember, USFL, we didn't get the jerseys until midway through the season. I will definitely be just as critical for the XFL if we are not able to wear our uniforms on kickoff day. Joseph loved Cavante Turpin making the Pro Bowl. He also loved that the home of the Vipers still TBA. Second least favorite moment, the USFL killed a team to create the Showboats. Yes, we got rid of the Tampa Bay Bandits, and then we have the Showboats now. I can't even talk anymore. Jenna talking, favorite least, quote tweeting, Pure Sports Productions, USFL finishing the season along with the champions being my Stallions. Least favorite, Devion Smith being released by Kirby Wilson because of pizza. God, does that not feel like a lifetime ago? Pizzagate in the USFL with Kirby Wilson. Andrew Murray, the professor, couldn't be bothered to leave a voicemail. That's okay, Andy. Writing in, traveling to Birmingham. Andy was there for our live show, doing a live broadcast alongside Reed for the USFL's inaugural game. Honorable mentions, Swag Kelly wins the Grey Cup. Least favorite, Jeff Fisher trotting out a punter to kick a game-winning field goal versus the Stars. Yes, really appreciate that. And really just appreciate all your guys' support this year. Kind of a weird segment here. I don't do a lot of long solo stuff at the end of the show, but I thought this was good rounding out the year. I really appreciate all your guys' support. Big year coming up. XFL 3.0, USFL 2.0 Season 2. Really excited for the CFL. I think they're getting back a lot of the momentum from the last season 2 years ago. We have Fan Control Football starting in May, the IFL, the partnership there, lots of other stuff. Like I said, make sure, leave your comments. What was your favorite moment of 2022? And let's get some predictions for 2023. Comment on that. It'll be fun. We can revisit this in a year and think, oh, those dummies, they didn't know there's a new football league we didn't even know about. So thank you guys all. Like and subscribe. Get your football. Get your TSL merch. And thank you guys all so much again. I will see you in the new year. Don't forget John Vogel and I, Monday, January 2nd, breaking down the supplemental draft and previewing training camps for the XFL. Thanks so much.